Do what you gotta do, my wild, sweet love. One of my favorite Nina Simone songs. And really a great little title to remember. Do what you gotta do. But do it conscious, heart-centered, divinely guided. I am Reverend Amani Malaika, and I want to talk about conscious action, divine right action, what it means in our mission statement at the Albuquerque Center for Spiritual Living to be love in action.
And let's talk about the dark. Morgan Harper Nichols, a thinker of our time, says there's a reason the sky gets dark at night. We were not meant to see everything all the time. We were meant to rest and trust, even in the darkness. Just for a moment, would it be okay to live in a place, in a world, and an experience where we just don't get to see everything all the time? Where we just don't get to know what's up ahead? Where we can actually experience the darkness, the uncertainty, as a moment to just be like, you know what, let me take a chill moment. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure where we're going. I don't know how this is going to unfold. I'm gonna lay down. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lay down. Because there's nothing to do sometimes in those moments when we just don't know. And what if that uncertainty, that change, that dark place is actually a gift? What if the sun setting every day is this incredible gift that says, darling, lay down. You can stop now. It's okay. And nature herself has designed it so that you are given that gift every day. How many of you find yourself, especially in the wintertime when the days are shorter and the nights are longer, find yourself like racing towards sunset, like I didn't get enough done and now it's dark, right? And I'm like, 3:45, it might be time for pajamas. Just might be. Because we've been so enculturated and programmed to achieve and do and produce and go. We've literally created everything you can imagine to make the dark go away. Motion lights. You don't even have to flip a switch. You just move and it becomes light. We have the clap-ons. Shit is ridiculous. I'm sorry. It is so ridiculous. I'm just gonna let there be light. And we do this because we've become so uncomfortable and unskilled at the dark. And that, I think, is a metaphor that we could take a lot of places. All that we have rejected about the wholeness and totality of life that we've decided because of our program, because of culture, that it simply just shouldn't be. Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything that's uncomfortable. I'm just not. I don't have to. I'm going to design an entire life built on comfort and convenience. I'm gonna have everything I ever wanted delivered to my door, thanks so much. This is what we've created as our lives. And how many people get mad when your Amazon stuff didn't come on time? You're just mad. The delivery person did not get there in the 48 hours it was supposed to get there for free, by the way. It's inconvenient. And forget that if it got delivered after dark, right? And it stayed on your step all night. We have all of these conditions that we've decided is the right way to experience aliveness. And yet the entire universe has designed this light and this dark, this play of certainty and uncertainty. The ever-moving, changing planet that you and I live on, the ever-moving and changing bodies that we inhabit are not a mistake. This constant change, this not knowing how it's going to go down, is by design and is for you. Literally designed for you to have a full and rich experience of aliveness. And without the dark, you don't get to have that. If you don't know how to get still and drop down into the darkness of your own being, you are missing the totality of your aliveness. That is one of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gifts of the winter, is that it's this invitation that comes around every year, kind of like sunset every day, that reminds you to go into the dark and reflect, like the lyric said. It's like, here's a whole season I'm going to set aside for you to slow down, close your eyes, sit in the dark, allow yourself to put down distractions and busyness and noisiness, and go into a place of reflection. You know, when I was preparing today, I was thinking about the word reflection. And I actually already had my notes written for today, and then I was really thinking about what it means to reflect. And it's a word we use a lot, and it's a useful practice, reflecting, right? I've talked in the past about we live in a culture that has taken away our time for reflection, right? We don't spend a lot of time reflecting on did I do what I wanted to do? Did I say the thing I wanted to say? And I'm not talking about overthinking. I'm talking about reflecting. Sitting with, how is that? How is my life going? How are my relationships? How's my heart? But the word reflection means to reflect, to mirror what is in front of you, mirror what is around you. And I was thinking about that, why maybe we have spent a lot of time avoiding the conditions that reflection requires. Because when we get quiet enough and we get still enough and we become the mirror of what is, we become the mirror of what is. We reflect what is around us. We reflect our environment. We reflect our relationships. We reflect culture. And some of that is really unpleasant. It is really unpleasant sometimes to get quiet enough and to go into the darkness of our own souls and be like, oh my, I'm not a huge fan of what I am mirroring. And having to then reconcile with what is. But we are built to reflect. We are built to contemplate and grow our awareness, our consciousness, so that we can see what actually is. So that we can go into those dark places and sit with our discomfort, to sit with our own pain, to sit with our suffering and the suffering of others, and be with those realities, to expand, as the body prayer Clarissa took us through earlier, to expand our capacity to be with it, to hold it, to reflect even more widely and more deeply. And it takes time. it takes less doing. It takes quiet. Many of the things that we forgot to value in this culture. My brother and I had a very long conversation about time recently, and that the overriding idea that time is money in this culture, right? Except it's not. It's not. And we have a limited amount of time in these bodies in this shape. And to give ourselves the time to go within, the time to be in the dark, the time to sit with whatever we meet there, the time to reflect on what it is I'm reflecting, what it is that's showing up that I am mirroring back out into life. And when I do that unconsciously, what do you imagine you might be reflecting back to your life? It gets ugly, yes? Right? We find ourselves reflecting unconsciously a whole bunch of stuff that we don't hold as valuable or true or good or kind. But reflecting is part of our design. Mirroring is part of our design. Sinking into each other's vibrational fields is part of our design. And so to do so unconsciously, to reject winter's invitation, means that it is much easier to be a part of the problem rather than part of the solution. We go into the dark and reflect the darkness, reflect on the darkness. We wrestle with what we find there. As Howard Thurman, one of my favorite writers and teachers who's no longer on the planet, talked about, we lay our burdens, we wrestle in the inner altar of our own sanctuary. We take the grit and the nasty and the pain and the suffering and the whatever it is that we find ourselves reflecting into the dark so that we can then transmute it. So we become more conscious about what it is I'm reflecting so that I can discover that right underneath that pain, right underneath that suffering, right underneath that noise, right underneath all of the horror remains love. And if I can sit in that darkness long enough, if I can breathe long enough through my own discomfort, through my own noisy mind, every time, without fail, I land in the ground of love. I am reminded every time without fail that I am resting in this love in the arms of the one that have always been there. And so the practice becomes returning to that place again and again. Instead of fearing the dark, fearing the hard things, we go into them. We lean into them. We welcome them so that we can grow our capacity to expand. We can grow our capacity to hold all that there is to hold, and that we can have the experience of a full life instead of half a life that only happens in the daytime. There's a lot of fun shit that happens at night. And so in our rejection of the dark and the hard and the tough, we really lose our access to the ecstasy and the beauty and the joy and the wonder and the expansion. I want to share with you the story a bit of Guadalupe. It's Guadalupe's feast day on this week, coming up this week on the 12th. And if you've heard me preach during the winter season before, you've heard me preach about Guadalupe. But Guadalupe is one of the mamas that I talk to a lot. She lives on my altar. And she, for me, is the patron saint of mixed girls. And as a girl of mixed heritage, a daughter of colonizers and colonized, of immigrants, of slaves, of cotton picking singing, dancing, clogging, drinking people, Guadalupe, for me, is the goddess of those people, of us, of mixed heritage. Because her story is one of she didn't come into being until the horror of colonization in Mexico and the indigenous peoples and the temples of Tonantzin were all destroyed by the Spanish conquistadors. And what rose on the horror of that land and those stories was this mishmash of Mary and Tonantzin, who we know now as Guadalupe. And so for me, I am a living embodiment of that wholeness. I would not be on the planet had slavery not gone down. I wouldn't be here. If my mom's people didn't come and colonize some land, I would not be here. Is it horrible, some of these stories? 100% absolutely. Is it completely mixed and entangled with joy and beauty and glorious perseverance and resilience and joy unspeakable? Yes. This is what it means to be fully alive. To reclaim all the places we've rejected and put on the shelf and I'd like to not have that be part of my story, but it's part of my story. And there's a whole saint, Guadalupe, who reminds me. Do you know there are more devotees to Guadalupe than there are Catholics? She's badass. We get here, we get to be revered and honored and reminded of how amazing we are because of the wholeness and totality of our stories, our histories. So I want to take you through an exercise. You in? Okay. So in the body prayer, body-mind prayer that Clarissa led us through, the words are, I lift up to the light, I ground down to the earth, I make space to expand, I go into the dark to reflect. So I want to take Guadalupe's story and make a prayer that includes the totality of her story. And maybe this is a practice you could take into the totality of your own story, maybe as part of your story that is struggling, that is hard to sit with. Yeah? So, based on Guadalupe's story, I lift up to the light the truth of the destruction and theft of lands and holy temples, the killing and colonization of indigenous peoples. I ground down to the earth the reality of these actions and circumstances. I make space to expand my capacity to hold these horrors and that pain and suffering so that I can also be the place of its transmutation. I go into the dark to reflect on what is also true underneath these experiences, these hard and dark stories. I go into the dark of it all and discover the wholeness and love and possibilities and goodness that remain and continue to be present through it all. So for a moment, choose something that feels really hard for you right now. And find the hardest thing about it, the thing that feels detestable, it's just horrible to you. And then repeat after me. I lift up to the light. Fill in the blank. Repeat after me. I ground down to the earth the reality of fill in the blank. I make space to expand my capacity to hold this horror so that I can also be the place of transmutation. I go into the dark to reflect on what is also true underneath this experience. Amen. Ashe. And so it is.